Hello, my name is Phil Svitek, and not only am I a content creator, but I also have a passion for helping artists reach their creative endeavors as well. And so I figured part of how I can go about doing that is by doing a weekly vlog where I share the projects that I'm working on and deduce the various things that I've kind of learned from it, or at least certain hurdles that I'm facing, so that way at least you can understand that, this happens to all of us. And yes, selfishly, there's a part of it where I get to document essentially my life for myself. One of the things that I did when I was younger was film everything, and in order to learn editing, I used to take all this footage. Back then, we used to shoot on mini DV. I'd have to digitize everything, but nonetheless, I would shoot my entire life, whatever we were doing it, whether it was at school, on the weekends, and so forth, and I would create these like documentaries, and they're unwatchable overall, but it did teach me how to edit and how to film and so forth. And now in hindsight, at the age of 30, having footage from back when I was in my teens, there's something special to it. You look back and you're like, wow, you can kind of see your progression in life and so forth. So it is kind of cool. So yes, selfishly, for me, the goal is to kind of document my life, but I also use it to hopefully inspire you, give you some tools, and also just let you know that things are okay if you're struggling every now and then. So speaking of that, by the way, if you see me looking down, I wrote like an outline for this one. Normally I just kind of go off the cuff, but this time I decided I'd write an outline. And so I wanted to start with the script. I've been working on a feature film, and it was always my intent to, at this point, basically done shooting with it, actually. It was this idea that spawned off of Chungking Express, which was made by Wong Kar-wai. He had this feeling that he was completing his third movie ever, and he was kind of getting bogged down by the filmmaking process. He said, I want to make this fun. And so in the 2 months downtime that he essentially had, he wrote, directed, and edited an entire feature film called Chungking Express, which is on AFI's top 100 list. And it's a beautifully amazing film. The perfection is in its imperfection. It's essentially two storylines. You follow one character, and then at about the midpoint, you just drop him completely, you never see him again, and then you go off on another. So I've had a love for this movie for a long time, and it was kind of my jumping off point. I've wanted to do my own version of Chungking Express, not copy it, but I live in LA, so what would the LA Chungking Express version of that be? Well, instead of using two storylines, I've essentially used three. And I mentioned last week that I did a table read, and the table read was very beneficial, but in the past week I've been having to address those notes, and there was a lot of self-doubt that kind of came in as I was trying to finish this draft of the script. I'm not completely done with it, but the main note was that the first, essentially, let's say, call it episode in the three characters. So the first character, we spent too much time on him. He almost got 40 minutes while everyone else's thing got broken up into 20 minutes and 20 minutes. And that just wasn't fair, right? It needed to be balanced a little bit more. So that was the greatest hurdle. And as I was just doing it over the weekend, I really had some self-doubt of like, do I just quit? How is this? How am I going to pull this off? And in a way, sometimes I got mad, like, do I have to address this note? What do they know? And things like that. But I just kept at it, and eventually I did, I would say, crack it. Maybe it's not perfect, but I had a great talk with my co-writer, Taylor Gates, and she kind of talked me down a little bit and helped me work through some of the minor details. And, I'm polishing it up now, and hopefully, then we'll get to rehearsals and be able to be shooting still like early October and so forth. So that's wishful thinking. That's my goal. But I think with this next rewrite, the major changes will be done. And I think the biggest kind of lesson there is you can have the self-doubt, but trek on. Don't get bogged down by it. I never like to stay. I have down moments, but I never like to stay down too long. And really, that's, I think, a testament to all the teachings that I've learned as far as mental fortitude, which is why I'm such a big advocate of mental fortitude in order to achieve your creative success. Because we're all going to have down moments, but if you stay in those down moments too long, that's what truly can be crippling. And luckily, I didn't let myself down and so forth hold me victim, if you will. And also kudos to Taylor for helping really flesh out the details of various things. Also, the other thing, I was just thinking about a lot of this. The nice part, like, it's frustrating. All these are really puzzles, right? Anytime you see a creative challenge, it really is just a puzzle that you have to overcome. And it was a nice part because in doing so, each time I get these notes, it really helps me flush out the backstory of these characters, because I'm going to ultimately have to know it as a director, as a writer, and so forth. Because if I don't, then if I just say, oh, we don't need to see that on screen, well, at the end of the day, for the actors, they need to be, they have a whole history, and they need to know this history so that they can inform that very specific moment. And truth be told, I didn't have all those specific moments because they didn't appear on screen. I didn't have to think about them, and this just kind of really forced me to think about them, which was cool. And in fact, I was walking the dogs, and I had a lot of these ideas, and so I would do like speech to text to the actors, and I said, hey, just in case I ever forget, here's your backstory. And I would do this to the various actors, and it was cool because they were like, oh, this is really cool. This really helps inform me. And so where I thought it was like a very self-serving act, David Allen has this idea that says the mind is great at coming up with ideas, not storing ideas. So for me, it was a self-serving act of, let me just get it on paper so that way I can always reference it because I know I'm going to forget. And yet I forgot, like, for them, it really is that beneficial, because when they step into these characters, when we finally go to film it, they're going to need to know this information. When I write these, whether it's my novel or these scripts that I've been writing for various things, you forget the actors and so forth. They don't have all this information. They only see the script or whatever it is. So you got to lay it out for them, so that's the cool part. So that was really fun. Anyway, one of the things I also found myself doing, I've been doing a lot more content, short form content throughout the, kind of trying to post once a day rather. And what I found was I was enjoying myself doing that content more so than my long-term projects, whether it's my novel, whether it is the script, and so forth. And I got to think about it. Part of it's the immediate gratification. Part of it, it's simpler, right? Like in terms of this, yes, I outlined kind of what I wanted to say and bring to you, but really it was just a matter of, this video itself is really a matter of me just taping it, slapping on some lower thirds and an end card, some music, putting it up, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit of work, but compared to a year and a half of writing a novel, this script that's been going on for 3 months maybe now at this point, this is child's play. And it got me to thinking that I wanted that instant gratification of just doing something and being done with it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, don't give up on long-term projects, because they ultimately will hold a great value as well. Not to say that this video itself can't get views, can't be beneficial to somebody, but there is something beautiful just for yourself, if for no one else, where you really think about an idea, you sculpt it, like with the script. I could have very well just written it, been done with one draft, and let's just shoot it. But in sculpting it, I'm going through the process of learning a lot, and really, my therapist Chuck says, be more specific, go deeper. And that's what I'm really ultimately doing with the long-term projects. And there's something there that you just chip away at, and you learn something about yourself and so forth. And I know I'm not explaining it in the best way, but there's a beautiful thing to creating content that's just like quick and easy, but also this tangibility of working on something for a long period of time that's really resonating in your mind, and you've worked through it. It's, if nothing else, it's really rewarding. One of the things I want to talk about that as I get to the tail end of a lot of these projects, certainly with the novel and the nonfiction book, these last parts really are for the audience, not really for me. I've already gone through the mental exercises in them to get them to where they need to be, and now I don't mean it derogatory, but it's going to sound derogatory. Like, it's a chore in the sense that, like, I just have to, the last 20%, it's really about just the polish for the audience, not for me. But that is kind of required, and the more I think about it and kind of spend time in that last 20% with all these projects, I do learn the importance, and that kind of really is the make or break of it all in a lot of creative projects, is that you just have to complete that last 20% in the sense of whether it be the rewrites, the marketing, just putting it out there and so forth. So, it's an interesting thing, really, that I haven't really considered much before, but now as I'm in that last phase of these projects, you want to wave the towel and just be like, I'm done, but you can't, because otherwise, the years of work you spent on a project, it's all for naught if you don't just complete that last little bit. And it's not that stuff's really that difficult. It's just that you spent so much mental energy already on it that you're just exhausted by that point. That's the unfortunate part. But it's the old cliche, you're running a marathon, not doing a sprint, and so you just got to push through that last little bit. Kind of just some shout outs overall. Last week I did a lot of, normally with my job at Cadence 13, I do a lot of the post-production, meaning I get audio and I edit together the various episodes, put in the intros, the ads, and so forth, right? It's almost like documentary editing, but for audio. And so that's what I normally do. And then obviously I still have to do that last week, but I also did a lot of recordings. Normally I don't do as many recordings, but last week just seemed to be completely booked with recordings for me. But it was a lot of fun. I got to meet Kat Sadler, and though I've heard her story before, there was just this exuberance to her that I loved, and she's a really fantastic person. Can't say enough good things, and that episode is going to be out on the GUP Podcast in a bit. I think within the next 2 weeks. Don't necessarily quote me on that, but it was just cool to really be a part of that. I also got a chance to be a part of the recording for Malcolm Gladwell. He was talking about his latest book with Elise Lunan, and it was really fascinating interview, and he's a really amazing guy, very charismatic, and I just loved it. That episode is going to come out this Thursday, so September 26th. That's the GUP Podcast, and I really enjoyed both those recording sessions. One of the things that is kind of amazing, when you're in my position, you're supposed to kind of be the behind the scenes person. I always look at it myself like I'm there physically, but I almost don't want, whether it's the interviewer or the interviewee, to know that I'm there, because I want them to be able to connect as much as possible. And it's kind of cool when the interviewees themselves make you feel special and acknowledge you that yes, you are part of the room, whether you want to or not. As much as you try to minimize your presence, what I appreciate is that they make you feel very welcome. And so whether it was Kat Sadler, whether it was Malcolm Gladwell, or in the past Rob Lowe, for example, they make you feel a part of it. They understand that you're making this interview just as much as the interviewer themselves. And that's a really cool feeling. Not to say that anyone that doesn't do that is a bad person, but for me, it's just really cool when they acknowledge your presence in that way. So yeah, I had a blast doing that. I also got to attend a live event. This is all GOOP related. So there was an event that was put on by GOOP in partnership with Banana Republic, where Gwyneth Paltrow interviewed Kerry Washington. And that was a really amazing thing to be a part of live in person. So, and I know that that's going to be coming out on the GUP Podcast as well in the coming weeks. But it was just fantastic to really be a part of that. Speaking of like Cadence 13 stuff, which is my full-time job, I work on a show called Yoga Girl, Conversations from the Heart, and there's a spin-off show called Yoga Girl Daily. The secondary one, the Yoga Girl Daily one, as the name implies, is a daily show. It's a kind of a more bite-sized show, whereas Yoga Girl Conversations from the Heart is a lot more, certainly lengthier and so forth, and she's able to dive deep. But anyway, Rachel Brathen is the host for both, and she's known as Yoga Girl. She came out with a book called To Love and Let Go. And one of the interesting things about when you pre-order a book is that it never arrives on the day that it actually comes out. So I finally got my book, and I'm excited to read it. I think one of the things that I'm fascinated by her is she just has this amazing ability to pour her heart and her soul into things that she does, and she's so raw and honest and charismatic. I really don't know how to fully describe it, other than I'm just in awe of her. I would say there's a natural talent there, but I also know that she doesn't take for granted. She works at it, certainly through all her yoga teachings and through the podcast and through her first book and now this book. You can really see her putting her gifts to use, and that's really a fantastic thing, and I can't wait to dive into this book. And again, I just kind of find it funny that when you pre-order something, it never arrives when it actually comes out. I actually would have a better shot of just going to my local bookstore and buying it there. But nonetheless, I'm glad I got my copy of To Love and Let Go. And it's interesting, I'm not necessarily, as much as I may seem that I'm trying to promote the book, I am in the sense that I think I think it is. I haven't read it, but I think it's going to be a wonderful book, judging by her other work. But also, it's interesting how things come to you when you need them most. So I recently had 2 family members pass away, and just given the title of the book, To Love and Let Go, one of the people was my grandmother, who I love dearly, and in that regard, I've loved her, but now she's passed away, and I have to essentially let her go. I can still honor her. So it'll be interesting how that book kind of really resonates and what I'm able to take out of it. I'm sure there's going to be tons that I do, but it's interesting that it comes at a time like this. So I'm really grateful for that fact. Some other stuff, just creatively, a lot of times I think a lot of people consume media first because it's a very... Marsha McLuhan had the idea of the medium as the message, and in that regard, I think whether it's Instagram, movies, TV shows, and so forth, we can kind of just veg out and let the media consume us. And I think and it's interesting, even like Gary Vee, who puts out so much content, he's a big advocate of create content first, then consume it. So I've been trying to do that very much so, and hopefully that's been evident. But in terms of the stuff but you need to do both. You need to, it's like breathing. You can't just breathe in, you must also breathe out, right? So it works in that sense. And the stuff that I've been consuming, film-wise, last week I got to see Ad Astra, which I did a review on. Also Rambo Last Blood, I got to see that with my friend Dimitri Panos, who I used to host Anatomy of Movie with over on Popcorn Talk. That was, I also did a review for that. And I also bought as many of the Miyazaki movies that I could on Amazon, because I just love, I'm a huge fan of animation. I really am. I think animation is wonderful, and his style in particular, like if you're unaware, it's absolutely amazing. I'm a huge fan of Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away, but like Kiki's Delivery Service or Tonto's Neighbor, I believe it's called. He has such a collection that he's made, and truthfully, apart from Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away, I haven't seen the other one, so I'm looking forward to diving into all of them. Because I don't know, they just have this, they're just so well done. They're simplistic in terms of their plot, and yet the spirit, the truth that's there really resonates. It goes so deep, and for those of you that you know Miyazaki, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I strongly encourage you to check out some of his movies. The other thing that was kind of interesting last week was I was having trouble sleeping because there was so much creativity brewing in my mind, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, because you need to be able to, I think you need to be able to sleep, and I was just so anxious to get a lot of this stuff done that I allowed it to kind of happen, and I'd stay up and maybe I'd sleep for 45 minutes, then wake up, jot a lot of stuff down, fall asleep for 30 minutes. So I had a lot of restless nights, and in a way it was good because I worked out a lot of the creative problems I was working through. But I know that I can't depend on that because it ruined my sleep schedule, and I had to take a lot of naps. I was definitely tired throughout the days, and especially because I was going to a lot of recordings and had to make sure I stayed present and so forth. I never wanted to seem like, I was just tired and so forth. So yeah, I think my challenge this week is I got to get back to a sleep routine, and so when I go to bed, I got to shut off my mind and really just get through the night and wake up and do it then. Certainly there's techniques that allow one to do this, whether it's taking a hot shower, bath, reading at night, not consuming social media or your phone for the last hour, not consuming kind of what any type of screen really for the last hour right before you go to bed, meditation, playing just kind of Zen music. All that stuff helps to fall asleep and really have a good night's sleep. The other thing, I've had a standing desk for, let's say, half a year at this point, and creatively, whenever I got stuck, especially with the script and so forth, I just need to change things up. And so having a standing desk really does help, because when you're just sitting for long periods of time, hours on end, it's not good for you. And just mixing it up made it great. So I would encourage you to get a standing desk. They're not the cheapest, but they're not the most expensive. Mine was about, I'd say, $150, I think. And it's great. It works well, and I enjoy it. It is a little bit bulky. It does make the table, seem more cluttered than it actually is. But it's been amazing, and I can't praise it enough. And one of the cool parts is, a lot of times when you work on a laptop or something like that, you have your keyboard and then you have your monitors, but generally the monitors end up being below your eye level, and so you're always tilting your head down. With this, even if I'm sitting, the screens, the way it's kind of set up, the keyboard's at an optimal height for my hands, and the screen's at an optimal height for my head, so that way I'm not having to tilt down. The other cool part, so I host my podcast through Anchor. Anchor is fantastic. They were bought out by Spotify, and they allow you to also insert in ads. And I've been doing my podcast for a while, and kind of looking back on it, I'm making some money on the podcast. Now, it's just more like, go out with your friends once a month type of earnings, but that's still pretty cool that my podcast, you're a professional when your art is making you money. And in this sense, it's not making me a living, but it's making me some money, and that's a really cool feeling. Not that that's why I got into it, but it's just really cool. The last thing I want to talk about this is nothing to do with really creativity, but I think one of the more important aspects nonetheless is Greta Thunberg. She's a Swedish environmentalist activist. She's only 16 years old. Really inspiring story just overall. She spoke, one of the things that fascinates me, and I really want to do a fictionalized version of this really soon, but it's just one of those things that I don't feel like I'm at the stage of my life where I'm able to do this idea justice. But this idea that, again, I'm generalizing, so I apologize, but as Americans, we just consume so much media that we turn a blind eye to a lot of the other things. So this weekend, while there was the Emmys and so forth, and everyone's like posting about the Emmys, it's certainly on my social media, right? You know, your reality is your perceived reality becomes your world. And so my perceived reality is that everyone around me just consumes content, is on Instagram and so forth, and everyone was talking about the Emmys and that, you know, who best dressed and who should have won, who shouldn't have won, and blah blah blah. And yet there's a 16-year-old girl who's delivering this very powerful message about climate change to the UN, and no one's really talking about that. And that's really sad to me. Whoever, like, to me, World War III won't be fought with guns or anything like that. It'll be just fought with media content, whoever can kind of consume the minds of the consumers. And it's unfortunate, that I think entertainment is wonderful, but at the end of the day, it's there to serve a purpose, and we have to kind of really consider that we are part of this world. And if certainly the world is, we deteriorate the world and it's not going to be here, then all this goes away. Now, I'm of the belief that the world's going to be ultimately fine. It's going to be us that are fucked. And her speech was absolutely wonderful, but I posted on my Instagram in the sense that she's a phenomenal person with an incredible message, and yet that message shouldn't be that incredible. And I told people to really think about that, because it's like, why are we arguing about climate change? Why aren't we just doing things to actually solve it? The fact that we have to debate, is climate change real, is it not, is just absolutely insidious, really. But yet, again, just seeing a 16-year-old person have the impact that she has, it really shows that you and I can have an impact just the same. We often downplay the amount of influence we do have when we actually have a lot, and that's why I wanted to take the time now to speak to that. Anyway, that's it for this week. I mean, there's other stuff that happened throughout my week and so forth, but I just wanted to share it. And if you have any questions, anything you'd like me to talk about in future stuff, by all means, let me know in the comments section. I'm happy to do so. But yeah, bye.